All right, welcome back to the Mindset and Money podcast. Today we're diving into something pretty fundamental when it comes to, your financial well-being. We're talking about negotiation. Ooh, and specifically, how mastering this one skill can really unlock your earning potential and help you get paid, honestly, what you deserve.
It is really remarkable, isn't it, how much time we spend, focusing on how to own money, how to save money.
Right.
But this crucial skill of advocating for ourselves, for our own value, it often gets overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a topic that makes people really uncomfortable. Even the thought of negotiating, it just brings up maybe awkwardness, maybe even a sense of fear, like, am I going to rock the boat?
Hmm.
But that discomfort, however understandable, can really have some significant financial consequences over time. I mean, if you're not negotiating, you're leaving money on the table. And that impacts not just what you're earning right now, but your long-term financial security.
Absolutely.
So the big question we're digging into today is why? Why do so many of us just instinctively avoid negotiating? And more importantly, what are some really practical steps that we can take to change that?
Yeah.
I think we've uncovered some really fascinating perspectives on this.
We have. The data is actually pretty striking. I mean, a large percentage of the workforce, they just never negotiate salary.
Really?
And in the freelance world, it seems that undercharging is almost more common than not.
It's hard to believe. Is it really that many people who just kind of take the first offer?
It is. It's something like 60% of employees just agree to whatever that initial salary that's put in front of them.
Wow.
It's a huge missed opportunity.
It is a missed opportunity. And I have to ask, what's going on the other side of the table? Because, I mean, you're saying like people aren't negotiating, but is there an expectation that they should be?
Often, yes.
Nah.
There's research that suggests that companies actually bake in like a negotiation buffer of
Oh,
around
wow.
5 to 10% in their initial offers.
Oh, wow.
So this isn't always about trying to like lowball candidates. It's more of an acknowledgement that different people, they value different things. Salary is just one component. And so by not engaging in the negotiation, you're basically leaving that flexibility unused.
Okay, but why not just offer a fair price up front? What's the strategic advantage for the company in starting lower?
Well, there's a few potential reasons. For one, it allows them to gauge a candidate's enthusiasm,
Uh-huh.
how much they really value the role itself. Someone who accepts immediately, even at a lower rate, might be perceived as more eager.
I see.
It also provides that opportunity to negotiate, to make the candidate feel like they've, won something,
Sure.
even if the final offer was always within, their initial range.
Makes sense.
Plus, different candidates are going to have different expectations.
Right.
And starting slightly lower gives them room to kind of adjust based on those individual circumstances.
Okay, so let's unpack why we feel this hesitation. To even start the conversation in the first place, like what are the main mental roadblocks that really keep us from asking for what we're worth?
Well, a big one, and as you mentioned earlier, it is fear of rejection.
Mhm.
People often just assume that if they ask for more, it's automatically going to be a no,
Right.
and they'd rather just avoid that perceived, negative outcome altogether.
But I'm curious, is that fear always rational? Are there times when asking for more could actually, strengthen your position?
That's a good question. And while that fear of being outright rejected, that is understandable, in many professional contexts, a well-reasoned negotiation can actually demonstrate your confidence, and your understanding of your own value. And that can be seen as a positive trait.
Interesting.
It shows you're serious about your career.
Right.
You understand, your worth in the marketplace.
Makes sense.
Of course, there's a balance. An unreasonable demand could be off-putting, but a thoughtful approach is usually well received.
Sure. And you said fear of rejection is a big one, but what else contributes to, this reluctance to negotiate?
Well, a lack of confidence is a biggie.
Okay.
Many individuals just straight up doubt their own worth, and they struggle to kind of articulate their value. They might think, well, who am I to ask for more, when there's so many other qualified people?
Right.
Or feel like they don't have enough leverage, especially if they really need the job.
Yeah, it's that imposter syndrome creeping in, isn't it?
Yeah.
That feeling that like, I'm not quite good enough to demand more, even when all the evidence suggests otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And then, there's the very practical issue of not knowing how to negotiate.
Right.
It's not a skill that's typically taught in schools or even in many professional development settings.
It's true.
People just, they don't have the tools or the language or the strategies. It feels like navigating unfamiliar territory without a map.
It's true.
Yeah.
You're just kind of expected to figure it out on your own. It's like being thrown into some complex game without even knowing the rules.
Exactly.
Yeah. Are there any other factors?
Yeah, I think we need to acknowledge the impact of what some might call money trauma. This can manifest in different ways, feeling just inherently uncomfortable talking about money or believing it's just, impolite to ask for more than what's initially offered. And a lot of times this stems from, childhood experiences, cultural norms. Like if you were raised with this idea of just being grateful for what you have and not making a fuss, asking for more can feel deep down wrong or greedy.
That's a really powerful point. And, those deep-seated beliefs can be incredibly difficult to overcome.
They can.
But the encouraging thing is that, as we talked about earlier, negotiation is a skill.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like this innate talent. It's not something that just, a select few are born with. It can be learned and practiced and refined over time.
Absolutely. And just like any skill, the more you engage in it, the more comfortable and capable you become.
Yeah. Speaking of learning, I actually remember the very first time I negotiated a salary.
Oh, tell me about it.
It was for a role that I was genuinely excited about, and I got the offer. And my immediate feeling was just relief, gratitude. I was all set to accept on the spot.
That's understandable. You go through that whole interview process.
Yeah.
And then you're selected. It's like you've reached the finish line.
Exactly. But then there was this little nagging voice, the back of my head, that started to kind of pipe up. I had done a little bit of preliminary research, just, casually looking at some salary ranges for similar roles.
Yeah.
And I noticed the offer was kind of hovering around the lower end of what I had seen.
Yeah, that initial research, even if it feels informal, it's a critical first step. It just gives you a baseline understanding
Right.
of the market.
And it really was empowering just to have that. So I sat with the offer for a couple of days, and that little voice got a little more insistent. And I started to think about, my skills, my experience, what I knew to be, the market rate for someone with my background. But it was uncomfortable, honestly.
Yeah.
I was worried about really jeopardizing the offer, coming across as, difficult or ungrateful.
Yeah,
Those are normal anxieties to have.
absolutely. It takes courage to kind of push past that initial discomfort
It does.
and really advocate for yourself.
So I ended up doing some more in-depth research, really solidifying my understanding of what that typical salary range was, gathering, different data points. I even practiced a few different ways that I could, bring it up with a hiring manager.
It's smart.
My goal was to sound, informed and confident, but not demanding or entitled.
Yeah. That preparation, knowing what you want to say and how you want to say it, it makes a huge difference.
It really does.
Yeah.
So I spoke to the hiring manager. And of course, first I thanked them again for the offer, reiterated my enthusiasm for the role. And then I said something like, based on my research of the current market and my background and then I mentioned, specific relevant skills and experience, I was hoping for a salary in the range of, and I gave slightly higher, but still reasonable range. And I tried to keep the tone direct, but appreciative.
Yeah. That's a great strategy. Framing your request, by referencing that market research and your specific contributions, it just shifts the focus away from like a purely personal desire to a discussion grounded in, objective data and your proven value.
And you know what? They didn't pull the offer.
Good.
They came back with a revised figure. Not exactly at the top of my range, but a significant increase from their initial proposal.
That's fantastic. And it illustrates that there often is room for negotiation,
There is.
even when you think there isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a real eye-opening experience for me. It made me realize that negotiation isn't this like adversarial battle. It's more of a conversation.
Yeah.
A professional conversation about, value and fair compensation. And it wasn't about being greedy. It was about recognizing my worth and having the courage to advocate for it.
Yeah, that's such a crucial distinction. Negotiation isn't about trying to take advantage of the other party.
Right.
It's about reaching a mutually agreeable outcome where you feel fairly compensated for your skills, your experience, and all the effort that you're bringing to the table.
Okay, so for those listening who might be feeling that same hesitation that I felt all those years ago, let's break down some practical steps. How can someone actually start negotiating effectively, whether it's for a salary, for a new job, rates for freelance work, even everyday expenses like you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, let's do it.
What's step one?
Step one, this is the most crucial step, is to know your worth. And this involves doing your homework really thoroughly. You need to research salary ranges for your specific role, your industry, your experience level. Look at what similar positions are paying in your geographic area. Utilize resources, things like Glassdoor, PayScale, LinkedIn Salary, and there's a lot of industry-specific reports out there.
Yeah, those online resources are so helpful.
They are.
But it's also important to look beyond just that base salary, right?
Well, absolutely. So if you're a freelancer or an entrepreneur, you need to research the market rates for, the specific services that you provide. Consider the scope of the project, your expertise, and the value you bring to that client. And regardless of your employment situation, take stock of your skills, your accomplishments, your unique selling points, and, try and quantify your achievements whenever possible. Having this clear understanding of your value, this is what empowers you in the negotiation process.
So step one, all about that strong foundation of self-awareness and market knowledge. What's next?
Step two is to be ready with data.
Okay.
Like we said before, successful negotiation, it's not based on feelings or wishes, it's grounded in facts. So refer back to that salary research, industry benchmarks, your own record of accomplishments. Be prepared to articulate why you believe you deserve that compensation you're seeking, and back it up with evidence.
I feel like just having that data ready at your fingertips, it just boosts your confidence.
It does.
It changes the conversation from like, please, can I have this?
Yeah,
To more of a, this is what I'm worth.
exactly.
Okay, what's step three?
So step three is all about using the right language.
Okay.
The way that you frame your requests and respond to offers, it can make a huge impact on the outcome. You want to avoid hesitant, apologetic language
Right.
or overly emotional language.
Right.
You want to project confidence and professionalism.
Got it. So what's an example? Like what should we be saying? What should we not be saying?
Okay, so instead of saying things like, I was kind of hoping for a little bit more, or would it be possible to maybe consider a slightly higher salary?
Right.
Try being more direct and confident. So try saying, based on my research and my experience in, and then mention the specific area, I'm seeking a salary in the range of, and then state your range.
Right.
Or my standard rate for this type of project is, state your rate, which reflects my expertise and the value I deliver.
I like that. It sounds confident.
Yeah.
What if you get an initial offer that's lower than you were expecting? What do you do?
Don't immediately say no.
Okay.
Express your appreciation for the offer, but then calmly and clearly state your expectations. And you can reference your research. You could say something like, thank you so much for this offer. I really appreciate you recognizing my potential. As we discussed, based on my experience and, industry standards, I was anticipating a salary more in the range of, and then state your desired range. I'm very interested in this opportunity. Is there any flexibility in the compensation package?
So you're keeping it positive, but you're sticking to your needs.
Exactly.
What about step four?
So step four is be prepared for pushback.
Okay.
It's quite common that your initial request might be met with, a counter argument or some discussion about budget limitations. But don't be discouraged by this. It's a normal part of the process.
So how do you deal with that pushback or those budget concerns?
Stay calm.
Yeah.
And firm in your value. You can ask clarifying questions just to understand their perspective.
Yeah.
You can say things like, could you tell me more about, the budget parameters for this role?
Sure.
Or are there other aspects of the compensation package that we might be able to discuss? Things like performance-based bonuses, additional vacation time, professional development opportunities, remote work flexibility. Showing that willingness to explore alternative forms of compensation can keep the conversation productive. And it demonstrates your commitment to finding a solution that works for both of you.
Yeah, it's not always just about the money, is it?
Right.
There's all these other, benefits, perks that you can negotiate.
Absolutely.
Okay. And step five, the final step.
The final step, and sometimes this is the most challenging, is knowing when to walk away.
Oh, yeah.
If an offer doesn't meet your minimum requirements and the employer is just unwilling to negotiate further, you need to be prepared to decline.
They can be so hard. Especially if you really want that job or that client, but understanding that bottom line is so important.
It really is. Accepting an offer that undervalues your worth, it can lead to resentment, dissatisfaction,
Right.
and ultimately you're probably just going to end up seeking new opportunities sooner rather than later. Knowing your walkaway point, it empowers you. It signals to the employer or the client that you understand your own value and you're not desperate.
Right.
And it shows respect for your own needs and your long-term career goals.
So let's bring this to life. Let's make this a little more tangible.
Okay.
Let's say someone gets a job offer. The salary is $60,000 a year.
Mhm.
How would they use these steps to negotiate?
Okay, so following our guide, they've already done their research.
Right.
They know that the typical salary range for this role, their experience, is closer to $70,000.
Okay.
So when they're responding to the offer, they could say something like, "Thank you so much for this offer. I'm really excited about the opportunity to join your team. Based on my research of comparable roles in the market and my 5 years of experience in," and then mention a specific relevant field, "I was anticipating a salary more in the range of 68 to 72,000. I'm very interested in this role. Is there any flexibility in the budget to kind of better align with this range?"
Okay. That's a very confident way to open up that negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about a freelance situation? Imagine a potential client offers you $500 for a project.
Okay, so a freelancer who understands their worth, who's done their research, knows their typical project rates, might respond by saying something like, "Thank you so much for reaching out and considering me for this project. My standard rate for a project of this scope and complexity is typically $750. I'm happy to discuss the specific deliverables and explore, if there are any adjustments we can make to ensure it aligns with your budget while still allowing me to deliver the high quality work you're expecting." So this clearly states their rate,
Right.
but it also maintains a really collaborative tone,
It does.
and it kind of invites further discussion.
I like that you're keeping the door open to collaboration, finding a solution that works for both sides. And I know you mentioned earlier the idea of negotiating bills. How does that work?
It's surprisingly effective, and a lot of people don't even think to do it. Many service providers, your internet, your phone, even insurance companies, they often have flexibility in their pricing, especially if you've been a loyal customer. You can just call their customer service line and say, "Hey, I've been a customer with you for however many years, and I've noticed my bill has increased recently. Are there any current promotions or discounts available that I might be eligible for?" And you would be surprised at how often they are willing to, lower your rate or offer a temporary discount because the cost of acquiring a new customer is often higher than retaining an existing one.
Wow, that's such a valuable tip.
It is.
It's a form of negotiation, but it's one that we just don't always think of.
We don't.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the absolute key takeaways you want our listeners to really remember about the power of negotiation?
I think the most crucial thing to understand is that it's an essential skill
Mm.
for improving your financial well-being.
And-
You deserve to be compensated fairly for your work, your skills, your contributions. Negotiation is the tool to make that happen. It's not about being aggressive or demanding. It's about confidently advocating for your value based on thorough research and a clear understanding of the market.
And it's important to remember that this applies in all different contexts, not just when you're, getting a new job.
Yeah.
It's relevant for freelancers, entrepreneurs setting their rates, even just everyday consumers.
Exactly. Just having this ability to confidently and effectively negotiate, it gives you control
Yeah.
of your financial present and future.
So what's one concrete thing that our listeners can do, like right now, today, to embrace this power of negotiation?
I would encourage every listener to identify just one area in their life where they have an opportunity to negotiate. It could be, an upcoming salary review,
Mm.
a freelance project, even that internet bill. And then, once they've identified it, the next step is to practice what they're going to say. Write down a few key phrases, say them out loud. Even a little bit of preparation can really boost your confidence and increase the likelihood of a positive outcome.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really practical first step. And for those who want to, really delve deeper, build their confidence even more, maybe overcome some mindset blocks that might be holding them back, we have a resource that can help.
We do. We have our Money Mindset Reset ebook,
Yeah.
which is designed specifically to help you identify and break through those limiting beliefs that might be preventing you from advocating for yourself and your financial worth. It's got practical strategies, techniques, mindset shifts to help you cultivate a more empowered, assertive, financial outlook.
And you can find a link to our Money Mindset Reset ebook in the show notes. And while you're down there, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to The Deep Dive, leaving us a review, and sharing this with anyone who you think could benefit.
We appreciate your support.
We do. It really helps us reach more people, spread these important financial insights.
It does.
And we'd love to hear from you directly. What was your biggest takeaway? What are you going to implement from today's deep dive? Head over to social media, share your thoughts. Be sure to tag us so we can see it. And don't forget to check out the Money Mindset Reset ebook if you're ready to take that next step. We encourage you to start practicing those negotiation muscles, start actively moving towards greater financial freedom and the compensation you deserve.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening.